I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Department of Defense is working with Google to help secure America's digital defense systems, from establishing cloud-based zero-trust solutions to deploying the latest AI technology. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
At Lowe's, pros save big on the supplies you need to get the job done. With the new My Lowe's Pro Rewards program, get member-only deals every week and access to free standard shipping. Plus, members earn points toward exclusive rewards. Join for free today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Points are awarded on eligible purchases. Program subject to terms and conditions. Free standard shipping not available in Alaska and Hawaii. Exclusions and more terms apply. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello and welcome to 4Kids Flashback. I'm Tara Sands, joined by my co-host,
Steve Yurko.
Here we are again, Steve.
In front of microphones.
Talking.
At our cameras.
Wait, what does your shirt say? Frog? No.
Frog? No. Hippo.
Oh, I didn't see the bottom of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. Frog?
It's actually
no.
the way my camera cuts it off. It's perfect because it's a One Piece fans might know what this is because it's a shirt that it's a shirt a character wears in the actual story. The joke kind of works better in black and white, but yeah, like it's the way how am I going to be able to describe this audibly?
Okay.
The way it's cut off, the top of like because it's a hippo, front facing hippo with its mouth open wide. And like if you cut it off at the top, it almost kind of looks like a frog. You know, its nostrils are the eyes.
I see. So you have to it has to like back up and see the full picture.
The teeth are the teeth, but it's actually a hippo. And the word hippo cuts it off in the middle. So if you only saw it from hippo above, you think it's a frog. But no, if you keep reading and then look at the rest of the illustration, it's a hippo.
What character in One Piece wears it?
Fisher Tiger.
Okay, and wait, I have more questions. So in the show, is there a reason why that character's wearing that shirt, or is it just like a random shirt he's wearing?
It's a totally random shirt, just gag. And it's like he's like a very he's a very serious character. At least like what it turns out to be, but like it's such like a disarming kind of shirt, which is the majority of my fashion is just a bunch of cartoon characters on it, very disarming. So
it's a conversation piece. I mean, I needed to know why. I was like, I gotta know what's up with that shirt.
Have I talked about how like now I spot so many people wearing One Piece shirts and like it's not like a make or break like conversation starter for me anymore.
And it really did used to be in general. Like I feel like if someone was wearing a shirt like from something I worked on, or like a deep anime cut. But now we're numb to it.
You've never heard of this. You never heard of this anime called Steins Gate, but I think I saw a girl one time at the gym wearing that, and I almost wanted to go out of my way to be like, "Nice Steins Gate shirt," but I didn't want to look creepy, and also I can't start a conversation to save my life. But I was just like, I should give them props for wearing something that's not a Dragon Ball Z shirt at the gym.
Right.
So.
I think that's obscure enough that you could have said it, but like I find that I sometimes forget what I have on, and someone will say, "Hey, nice shirt," and I'll
you do the
I have
glance,
to look,
right?
and then I'm like, yeah. Or she might have been like, "Oh, I just borrowed this from someone." Like I don't know, and then
I remember
I
at another gym years ago, I saw someone wearing like a bootleg One Piece shirt, and I was just like, "Hey, nice shirt," and like I like I wasn't wearing a One Piece shirt. I like flashed my tattoo, which is a One Piece tattue.
Oh yes, you told this story before, but yeah, go on. Sorry.
Guy just looked at me, and I was just like, I'm just gonna go.
Never mind.
Here's a tip for you because you travel a lot. Now I'm like purposely wearing anime shirts when I fly because I feel like 9 times out of 10 TSA, someone there is an anime watcher. And they're much nicer to me.
Well, Eric Stewart was saying once, I forgot he posted on some kind of social media, I guess he has like a Kaiba thing, and someone pointed it out and said like, oh, I like that. And I guess he told them who he was and stuff. But see, like if I have a bulb, I don't know that I feel weird saying like, I'm the voice of blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I get weird about it.
Yeah, no, I still do. Like, not that I'm in the same position as you, but there was someone recently just happened to out of the blue. I was at Universal Studios here in Hollywood, and someone was wearing a very niche, like Christmas sweater, but it was from a wrestling podcast that I watch and like I've done artwork for in the past. I've collaborated a whole lot.
Oh,
and
then
I was
you
like,
have to.
And I'm like, I gotta go up and just be like, hey, but all I said was like, hey, I it's like, oh, hey, I love your sweater. I love that show. And I don't know if it was a language barrier or they were listening to their headphones and just like, yeah. But like, there was no conversation. And then
you tried.
And I told my friend who hosts the show, he's like, why didn't you just say like I've done artwork for them? I'm like, I don't know. Like I think no, who the fuck cares?
I just came from a doctor appointment for my shoulder because I feel like I just live at the doctor now. And I don't know if it was like a physician's assistant, the person who first saw me before the doctor, like around her neck, she had like a Sailor Moon pin. And again, like I feel like that implies something else. It implies that she probably watches more than it. But I'm like, what am I going to say? Like, and I could be like, I worked on that. And then I just look a little douchey. Like, so I just didn't say anything. But she probably would have just liked to have been complimented on it. I probably just should have said, if you guys listening have the same conundrum as we do, like where you kind of out in like at a convention, it's fair game. It's different. But like in the real world, do you guys deal with this where you just like want to bond with people over?
Well, now it's like, anime's getting so mainstream now. It's kind of just... It's like, like it's not surprising anymore. Like, I've told you like my Disneyland story from like 2009. Have I told you this? Maybe not.
I want to hear it
because I recently like found it again, but this was post 4Kids when Funimation took over for One Piece, and like the first piece of like merchandise that came out in that era was just a shirt that was at Hot Topic. And so I was like, snatch that, and I gotta wear it. And I was wearing it. I was in Disneyland, I think like in the summer of 2009. And a Japanese couple, like the girl specifically, like came up to me and like pointed out the shirt. And I was like, yeah. And like no one would ever point out a One Piece shirt. And like shortly after, I don't know, I think then like she reapproached me and she wanted a picture with me because I was wearing it.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. That would not happen now, but like
it almost makes you wonder too. Like maybe you just didn't know, and she was secretly like the creator was her cousin of One Piece, and she was like, I got to show him this. Like who knows? Because sometimes I'll do that.
Maybe like a Seiyu voice actor or something.
Yeah, like because I think sometimes I'll do it. Like if I see like a Bulbasaur backpack in the wild, I'll sneak a picture, and like people don't know or like sometimes I just kind of get a thrill out of just having like an anonymous conversation about what so maybe that was what she was even thinking. Like it's kind of a fun, I don't know.
I always like I don't know, I try to I remember speaking of like Japan, when I went to Japan, I think like customer service there in general, like they're very nice, and I think like they try to compliment you on something, and like they see people like me, like, every day at this point now, just who are anime fans going there, obviously wearing shirts. But I remember just like being there, and like I think like Universal, speaking of Universal Studios again, Universal out there, and employees there would like oh, you like One Piece, and like I would like just start a conversation like, oh, like if you read and watch, I'm like, oh, who's your favorite character or something like that. I think like that's like a great way to converse about it, I'm not immediately going to just be like, I do a podcast about it. I'm like, yeah, you and everybody else at this point. But like, I've never really, like, maybe in the early days, I'm like, oh, I do a podcast about it. Now
what about Rick and Morty stuff? Because, I mean, I feel like you're such a big part of that show. When you see that out in the world, do you say anything?
It was so funny. I was out in public again, and I was with friends, and we were walking by someone who was wearing like a Rick and Morty shirt. I think like a young kid. And like I noticed it, but didn't say anything. Like,
yeah.
But I sense in the air. I'm like, I think my other friends have spotted it too. And my one friend just turns to me, says like, it's like, are you gonna like break this? Are you gonna like scare? Like, are you gonna go up to that kid and be like, I work on that show and like break his mind? You know, it's
right? Like I have
funny.
friends who try to, my friends like they'll try to out me like that in public, and I'm like, please don't do that.
I don't like it either. But
don't do that, my friends. Well, our guest is gonna be here in a minute, but you guys follow us at 4kidsflashback.com. Check the show notes for all the links and stuff like that, because I'm super excited to geek out with our guest today, Tracey West, an amazing author, and we will be right back with Tracey. Our guest today is author Tracey West, possibly the most prolific author I've ever seen. She has about 8,000 billion, trillion, gazillion titles. I think that's a real number. And some of those books include some 4Kids titles. The Pokémon books mostly. There's some Yu-Gi-Oh thrown in there. A Cubics, little arrangement of Cubics books. And of course, a ton of other stuff that I'll make her brag about. But welcome to our podcast, Tracey West.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. And it is more like maybe 400 or so books, not like...
it's a lot of books.
Yeah.
And yes, and they range from things like, in terms of Pokemon, like a trivia book to a Yu-Gi-Oh guidebook to a how to draw Pokemon book. So we're going to cover all, and then like easy readers and chapter books and things like that. So we'll cover all of that. But I'd love to know, because at its heart, this podcast has become kind of this, I always say the subplot is how to lead a creative life is like the subplot to this podcast. Can you tell us how you got your start writing and found your way to being this incredible author today?
Oh, sure. Yes, I do feel very lucky and happy about being able to live this creative life, because I've been writing children's books for, more than 30 years now. It sounds like, wow, when I say it out loud.
Considering we're all only 25, that's amazing.
And I'll say, like, it started when I was an 8-year-old kid who loved reading, and an author came to speak to our class. His name was Leonard Kessler. He wrote this very fun book called Mr. Pine's Purple House. And anyway, it just sparked something in me, like, oh, authors are real people. You don't really think about authors as being living, breathing people when you're a kid. And it became a goal. It became something to aspire to. And I loved reading, and I loved reading children's books especially. So I went to college and I majored in English and I majored in journalism, and then, adult literature is just so depressing. Anyway, that's what I came away thinking. Like, when you're, especially at an English lit major, it's a lot of death and tragedy. And so my heart stayed with children's books. And I'm a Jersey girl originally.
Woo, me too.
Yeah.
All right. What county?
Bergen.
Me too. Hillsdale?
Oh,
you don't have to say.
No, it's
I can cut this out if you
no,
want.
it's in my bio. It's a very small town called Bogota.
Bogota,
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
Okay. And which I'm sure most people say Bogota.
All the time.
Yes. You have to correct them.
Yes.
But yeah, Bergen County.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so, as you know, a hop and a skip from Manhattan, which happened to be the children's publishing capital of the world. And so upon graduating, I thought, well, let me try to get a job in children's, there's really no handbook for,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you're a writer, you write and you write stories, but like as far as getting published and being a working writer, there's really no one pathway to that. So my plan
Yeah.
was go to work for children's publishing, which I did. And so basically long story short, I went to work for a few publishing companies and I worked as an editor for a while. And some of the companies were doing um, which I'll probably be talking a lot about tonight, which is a lot what's called like writer for hire. So basically, so maybe somebody else has a property like 4Kids and they want somebody to write their
Mm-hmm.
books for them. They'll reach out to a publisher or a book packager, which is like doesn't do the publishing but makes the books. And then the publisher will find an author and there's a flat fee. You don't make royalties on it. Those go to the licensor. And so I was working for a company that did a lot of that. So I started like, hey, I can write book outlines for you, and here's some
Mm-hmm.
story ideas for you. And that's sort of how I learned the ropes. So in a weird way, I sort of got to apprentice being a children's book writer and met many editor friends that way and wrote a few books. And then I have a good friend who is still a good friend to this day, Bonnie Bader, who went to work as an editor at Scholastic and was able to get me some work writing for, that's where I started working for licensed properties.
Okay.
So basically, I started writing for like, I did like a book about Karopi, Hello Kitty's frog friend.
Yeah. Oh.
And you haven't asked me this yet, but basically that led to Pokemon, which is really what jump-started my writing career. And it was kind of because, I was commuting to New York and um, before I would catch my bus, I don't know if anyone remembers, maybe it was just a regional thing, but one of the stations, I think Channel 11, used to air Sailor Moon every morning at 7 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. We've
this
talked
was
about this on the
the
podcast.
90s,
Yeah.
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 And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
was obsessed. So
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
was obsessed. And then that led to an obsession with, all sorts of Japanese television, really. And so what happened was Scholastic ended up buying the license to Pokemon
Mm-hmm.
before the game was released in the US and before the cartoon
Oh.
was released in the US. So so they brought me on before anybody had heard of it, and it was sort of like,
Wow.
oh, here's this, the word that might have been used was weird. Like here's this weird TV show about these creatures and they battle and we want to make books out of them. And Tracey, do you want to try writing these books? And I was like, that sounds like so much fun. Yes. And, you know,
What foresight they had to do that, because I mean, that was a big gamble for them, and I hope that they probably got the licensing rights at a good price, because this wasn't a big hit yet.
yeah, they keep authors in the dark about all the licensing
Yeah.
agreements.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I would not know.
They're like, just write pretty. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I forget to ask this, because these were licensed projects, did you get to have your name on all of them, or are there just a lot of things that are just a book that exists without an author because it's an adaptation of a licensed property?
Usually they will put the author's name, if not on the cover, inside on the title page. I think with
Okay, good.
with the Pokemon books, this was and I think when this was sort of, I mean, there have always been licensed books, but they really exploded, I think, with Pokemon, and so they were
Mm-hmm.
putting my name on the cover back then.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. So do you remember which was the first book you wrote for them?
Yes, it's called Pokemon I Choose You. And
Mm-hmm.
so basically what happened, so there was some work done either at the Scholastic level or in conjunction with whoever the licensing partner was, which I don't think it was 4Kids at that time. I'm not sure. Or
Right. It was probably from someone from the Nintendo offices, I'm
maybe,
guessing.
I don't know. Um, Anyway, so they said, we want you to take 3 episodes about Ash and Pikachu, where Ash first meets Pikachu, and then there were these 2 other kind of key episodes where Ash and Pikachu learn to trust each other and turn them into a chapter book. And by a chapter book, I mean chapter books are written for usually kids in 3rd through first grade, and they call them chapter books because they're not picture books with pictures on every page. It's just like a book you or I would read, divided into chapters. But so I received VHS tapes of the episodes in Japanese, and there were no scripts yet. I would usually only receive a transcript of the dialogue. So somebody would translate the dialogue.
So you were getting the very basic transliteration, like the direct, no color to them at all. So, okay.
Right.
And not even subtitles, right? So you're like looking at the paper and the screen.
Wow, so this is very early.
Hi, it's Ashley and Jess with Wellness Reality Check. We are 2 health practitioners, moms, and best friends trying to navigate the world of holistic health in a balanced, productive way that brings health to our lives instead of dogmatic extremes. We'll be breaking down health trends, interviewing your favorite health influencers, and always keeping it real. We hope this podcast brings listeners back down to earth, providing a dose of reality in the often idealized world of health and wellness.
Wellness Reality Check. Follow the show now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at wellnessrealitycheck.com.
Hey guys, Tara here. If you are enjoying the 4Kids Flashback podcast, here is another podcast you will probably like. It's called the One Piece Podcast. They have been covering One Piece since 2009, so there are about 1 million episodes for you to listen to. Highly recommend it. They do all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff, break down the shows, interview actors. You're gonna dig it. Go to onepiecepodcast.com or look them up wherever you hear podcasts. And you might even hear a familiar voice that sounds a lot like Steve Yurko. Check it out now. Thanks.
That means, watching each episode maybe 12 times and,
But like if you lose your place, there's nothing you have to like look at the time code if you lose your place on the paper to make sure.
I mean, you can sort of, it wasn't that hard to figure out.
Okay, good. Okay.
And
I'm making it sound much more difficult.
It really wasn't.
Okay.
But
okay.
What was hard was trying, so as a writer, it's my job to describe like what's going on the screen. And so there was just a lot of rewinding and trying to describe all the action scenes in a way that kids would really find appealing. And I did the first one, and that one I think shot right to the top of. I think the book came out right when when Pokemon broke here. I feel like I remember it breaking really fast, right? Like it.
Yeah.
And so the book came out at the same time, and then it was bam. And then for like I remember I would have maybe they brought in other writers to do the books. I will say I did write, like dozens of them after that.
A lot of books. Yeah.
And I would maybe get 2 weeks to write each book, which is like
2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, because they wanted,
holy crap,
they wanted the books out there. So
because I mean we've found out through this podcast, and Steve knew this already, that they couldn't produce the toys fast enough. Like the show hit and the toys weren't ready, so maybe this was a way of like, okay, write this. Like everything was just amped up because the show hit so quickly. So you were the recipient of that timeline because of the craziness. I want to also point out here, because I have more detailed questions about these books, but the disconnect, like so many people assume, oh, you wrote the book, you must have been on the phone with Nintendo and the Pokemon company all day. And like even with the actors, or when I do an audiobook, I don't even get to talk to the author most of the time. Like people are very segmented for a reason I don't totally understand. But when Tracey talks about this, it's not as if she had a direct line to the Pokemon folks.
Not at all. No.
Isn't it crazy? So what were you given like a show Bible of like terms and things, or like what did you have, or just the episodes? Because that's nuts.
There was no show Bible available in I'm assuming available in English at that point. So no,
right. It was early.
You know, in the years later, as I was working for different properties, I would generally get a show Bible, but no, it was just it was literally those VHS tapes and transcripts, which I think, I'm trying to remember. I think they would come in the mail. I don't even think they were email attachments.
Wow.
Like, that's how long ago it was.
And is the process complicated by the fact that, like, when you write your own book, it's you and the editor going back and forth. Now with this, you're sending it to your editor or publisher, and then they have to go to the higher ups that you're not allowed to talk to. So does that slow everything down?
Normally, yes, it does. So what was unusual, I think it was in everybody's best interest back then to get the books out. And so the process moved pretty quickly. So it would be, the editor communicating with Nintendo, and then maybe getting back to me if changes were needed. But honestly, I wasn't doing a lot of revising on those books.
Wow, that's so crazy.
They pretty much, I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, they pretty much went right through.
So that book was an early chapter. That was a chapter book, that first one. When you write those, and for any property, I guess this is applicable, but mostly for Pokemon, are you told, like, okay, we want to sneak some vocabulary words in there? Oh, this sentence structure is too difficult. Like, in terms of the kidness of it all, what kind of parameters do you have?
Oh, that's a good question. So with a chapter book, if they tell me this is for 6 to 8-year-olds or 6 to 10-year-olds, I was a somewhat experienced writer at that point. So generally there's no specific vocab that, anything that maybe is difficult sentence structure would come up in the editing stage. But basically, if you've been doing this, you kind of know the spot to aim at. Scholastic moved on to doing, readers that you mentioned before, and those can sometimes have specific vocabulary, but usually for a licensed property, especially when they want a book that's easy to read but tells the story of the cartoon, you don't have vocabulary restrictions, and it's really just about keeping sentence structure really simple and assuming kids are going to be able to read Togepi because they know
the Pokemon names are already a vocabulary nightmare, and I'm sure kids mispronounced it all over the place, which is fine because they said Pokemon wrong all the time anyway. Yeah. So what's the difference?
Even I still say Pokemon wrong.
Yeah, and I won't correct you. It's all over. Something I did notice is that these books, and I love this about it, is that they approach it as if the kid has never seen the show. Like, so, like, I noticed you describe Misty's orange hair and things like that. Was that something that was told to you, like, pretend this child knows nothing about this world?
I wouldn't say that was more of an instinct than a particular instruction, especially because just as a writer, you want to sort of give as complete a picture as possible anyway, without necessarily relying on the kids' knowledge of the show. And you can't really count on that either. So I sort of had to tell the stories as though, maybe this was the first time a reader was encountering this world.
Right. Okay. And did you have any leeway in terms of, like, oh, I'm going to put in this, like, random sale, like, store clerk? Could you give a name to people, or was this, like, nothing outside of what it was in the episode and that information?
I very carefully stuck to whatever was in that episode and nothing else. that was just the safest way to do it. Now, I'm talking specifically about those Pokemon books I wrote in the 90s. I've worked on other properties where I can come up with original stories, or
okay.
yeah. And in fact, one of the Pokemon chapter books, they did let me come up with 3 original stories for one of the chapter books, and they were all
cool.
They were all about Team Rocket. So I believe there's a chapter book called Team Rocket Blasts Off, and none of the if I'm right about that, because it was a long time ago, but one of the Team Rocket books is totally original story. So I was really
that makes sense, because probably at the time there wasn't enough in the episodes for those characters to fill out a chapter book. So
yeah, and I have no idea how they made the decisions. They would be very specific, like, we want a book with these 3 episodes in it, and usually it was based around one of the Pokemon or one of the characters, right? There was a Misty book and a Brock book.
Did your writing change after you saw the show in English? Like the book I have here is Journey to the Orange Islands, and when I read it, I could hear them all, like Meowth specifically, because Meowth's such a specific sound. Did that change the way you wrote?
I'm sure that helped me make the books better, because I absolutely watched every episode of the cartoon in English once they were out. And once you hear Meowth's voice, like you'll never forget it, and it does inform the writing 100%. So yeah.
Could you pull direct lines from the episode? Were you allowed to once, or were you that far ahead? Like let's say this Journey to the Orange Islands book, we were probably still recording it, so you wouldn't have a script at that time to pull from if you wanted to use a direct line from an episode. Is that correct?
No, it was always, I believe I don't know this for sure, but I believe the translation of the lines was close to the actual dialogue. I don't know if it
sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we would get in the booth and they'd be like, they wrote a 3-syllable word here, and we only have 1 syllable to say that, so things like that. So I was curious if there were direct lifts in the book, but no, because you have to get it out in time.
Right. So I would use whatever dialogue I was given. And I do seem to remember that after a few years, I was getting actual scripts in English, but
okay.
That took a while.
So you're in this Pokemon world. Did you work on that Yu-Gi-Oh stuff and the Cubic stuff? Was that during the time you were writing these Pokemon books?
I would say that was a little bit later in the 2000s, right?
Yeah, I didn't know how late. I think probably you were doing the later Pokemon books during that time, I'm guessing.
Right. And I basically what happened, it was sort of the same thing where when it was Scholastic once again got the rights to Yu-Gi-Oh, it was that thing of, well, maybe Tracey can figure this out, And so I sort of became, and I always laugh because I'm not a martial arts artist by any means, but I end up writing all these books with, so many martial arts battles, and so that's kind of funny, but so I got brought on to Yu-Gi-Oh and Bakugan. I was so glad I got to write 1 Card Captors
oh, cool
book, which I was so excited about, because I was also very obsessed with Card Captors. But
oh, how funny. We interviewed one of the writers from Card Captors, actually, who he had worked at 4Kids and then went on to that. And Steve definitely had questions for him about that. Right, Steve? Wasn't that with the Joshua interview?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I had to go back. I'm like,
yeah, it is kind of, because then you became known as that person who could do these adaptations. One of the books that Steve has is a Yu-Gi-Oh guidebook. So I was really curious. They must have some kind of show Bible for you and that kind of thing.
Once again, I'm going to say I Yu-Gi-Oh! I had more Yu-Gi-Oh! I would get like maybe a little a few pages with like the different monsters and what their powers were and with some of the characters. So, but mostly to write like a guidebook with a lot of information in it. It was just me watching every single episode and taking notes, kind of the way somebody doing like
Wow.
like the way anybody who does a show wiki now would probably do
That's
it.
so interesting.
Yeah.
See, I like for a guidebook specifically, my guess was that they sent you tons of information and then you organized it into a guidebook, but it's kind of the opposite. You sort of wrote it for them.
Well, as I said, they would send me some information, which was helpful, but unless you really watch the show and understand the spirit of the show and you don't. I mean, I have to give it to you voice actors so much, because when you read it on a page, I get so bored reading scripts. When all I get is scripts, it's like, oh, really? And then finally when I'm maybe I do a lot of work for Lego Ninjago now, and I'll usually get the scripts before I get to see anything on video, and then sometimes I don't really get it until I watch the video. But it's not even it's not even so much the visuals as it is the actors bringing those characters to life and hearing them interact, and that makes such a difference. But if somebody needs something in a hurry, I'm working off a script.
But the Yu-Gi-Oh one, at least like the book I have on hand looking through it, that it is a guide, and it doesn't cover it covers a good chunk of the series. So were you watching all of that?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. That's that's a few 3 or 4 seasons are covered in that book. I just was looking through again, and
writing books based on cartoons was probably the main part of 2 decades of my career, but it's not a terrible way to live. Really, I mean,
not at all.
I'm watching cartoons and I'm writing stories. Like it was a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's interesting too, because I don't know at what point they were making so many edits to a show like Yu-Gi-Oh! And I wonder at what point you were getting it, because there were all these terms. We had to be careful not to use the word death too much and things like that. So I wonder, like, was there more editing with a Yu-Gi-Oh! Thing? I wonder even if the Japanese side had to approve what you wrote.
Yes, I seem to remember that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Approvals, were a little more detailed and a little more problematic, but I don't have a super clear memory of that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Did you get to have any input on which images were used, or was that all above your pay grade?
Not necessarily above my pay grade, but generally, the art department handles that, and they would work with someone directly at the licensor who would provide them with whatever images they could. And sometimes that comes back to the writer, we can't get this scene that is described in the guidebook, so you have to come up with something else.
Are there books that you've written for shows that like just have not, the show maybe wasn't a hit, so the book never came out? Like, do you have books that are just unpublished?
Oh, I feel like there's definitely a couple that fit that it's more the story is like there were shows I really loved writing for, and then just for whatever reason the books didn't do well, or maybe the shows did. Like I mentioned, I only got to do one card captors book, I think, and I finally got to do a Sailor Moon book, but again, I think I only did 1 or 2.
Okay.
I moved on to do a bunch of things for Cartoon Network, and I got the Atomic Betty gig. I don't know if anyone remembers her. She had.
I remember that show.
Yeah. But that was, again, like, maybe I got to write one book and that was it. So that's usually what happens, and then I get sad.
Can you watch cartoons for fun, or is this kind of like, because I can't anymore really. Like I watch them differently.
Oh, well, so I guess I've moved on to, like now I'm currently just binge watching Bob's Burgers, but
Okay.
yeah.
So you can. Okay, good.
I can. And I was like, so, in like recent years, such a fan of Steven Universe and Adventure Time. I went through all Adventure Time, and I actually got to write Lumpy Space Princess's Guide to Life or something like that. And that was.
And
that I would. Oh, sorry. Go on.
And did that involve using like a lot of like her terminology?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Writing in the voice.
Writing
in.
Yeah. In fact.
You were saying.
Yeah, I've written in some funny voices. I recently did a Powerpuff Girls cookbook as Professor Utonium. But it is a lot. But then I wrote a lot of Powerpuff Girls books back in the 2000s, but I really had to go back and watch them all again just to make sure I got the voice right.
Right. So when you watch, I would assume when you watch anything now, though, do you think about how to novelize it? Like even if it's like Succession or Seinfeld, are you like, oh, I could make a chapter book out of this, or can you separate your
I can absolutely separate it. I can absolutely.
Okay,
it's more like if a show comes on or crops up that I love, and I do get that. It would be so fun to work on this license. Like, what do I have to do?
Yeah. Okay. So I noticed in this Pokemon book that the Pokemon don't have any genders. Like if they do speak, it's always Pikachu said or the Pokemon said. Were you told not to ever use genders with the Pokemon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Although I think then there were some where I was told specifically to use genders. It was
like the ones like Nidorino and like because they are specific,
right.
They have one of each or something.
That sounds right. That sounds right. But yes, there was some specific instruction about that. Yeah.
Did you ever meet anyone other than like the Scholastic people? Did you ever get to meet anyone from the Pokemon Company or Nintendo or the show? Or did you ever go to 4Kids for any reason?
No. Again, it's that thing in publishing where the publisher
so
just communicates everything to the author. I will say, and I'm going to be mad at myself that I don't know his name, but probably you will know his name. I should have refreshed my memory before this.
That's
okay. When Pokemon turned 10 years old, they had a big 10-year celebration in Central Park. And then there was a reception afterwards that I got to go to, and I got to meet the then president of Pokemon USA.
Okay. We were not we didn't know him.
Yeah.
I mean, we never got introduced to those people.
I had a brief meet. So that was the only time I would say.
Oh, that's cool that they included you in that.
Yes. And then shortly after I was relieved of my duties, which was Pokemon USA decided I don't think they continued their license agreement with Scholastic, and that also ended their relationship with me, which was it was a huge part of my life for 10 years.
Yeah. Was there a character that maybe you related to or enjoyed writing the most? That was one of the listener questions we had for you.
Oh, let's see. I don't think there was a human character. I probably always liked it when I got to write about Misty. I know that seems like the obvious. Oh no, wait a second. I changed my answer. Team Rocket, hands down every time. So anytime Team Rocket popped up, I just had a blast with those two.
Oh, and it really does. It reads just like the dialogue to me, like when I was looking at it. And it flows really fast. One of the questions one of the listeners asked is, They love your Club Penguin books and Pop Tropica. They're a big fan. And they wanted to know how you managed to lure the reader into the world, like finding that starting point when you have 3 episodes. Because, again, there's some exposition in there, kind of. And so, like, how do you start?
So there's the Pokemon answer, and then there's the Club Penguin, then there's the MMPR. What's multiple world role-playing game?
MMORPG.
MMORPG, right. Then there's that answer. So for Pokemon, I just usually I would take a cue from how the show opened and just try to work the exposition in as seamlessly as I could, because really the show openers were always great and exciting. So I don't know if I can take so much credit for the books starting that way. As far as Club Penguin and Pop Tropica go, again, I had a pretty fun career because I would just literally spend hours on those sites playing the games. And so with Club Penguin, you just get a sense of what the other players think is cool or fun or important, and that really helped me to come up with I did a lot of actually my sister Catherine Knowles, she's a writer too, and she and I would work on all the Club Penguin books together. But that really always inspired lots of ideas for us, just interacting with the other players and seeing what was popular and where everybody was going and what they were doing and saying.
I got to ask, because you also wrote the WWE Pick Your Path books, and I'm curious what the research or the reference materials went into writing those.
Okay, so I am not such a WWE fan now. But I my first marriage was to a huge wrestling fan, and again, I just watched a lot of wrestling matches. I went to live wrestling matches. So I spent many years being a huge fan of that form of entertainment. And again, it was that thing of, all right, who do we know who likes wrestling and can write these books? And
oh, cool.
It was like a let's ask Tracey. But so that was legitimate, genuine research, many years prior to writing those books.
Nice. Yeah, because I just would have thought, I'm like, geez, like if that was something you weren't familiar with, it's like where do you start? And there's like and with like the WWE stuff, there's so much lore with that. It's almost like getting into American comics is what I call it sometimes. There's so much you got to know, and so much but you were already familiar. So.
Monday Night Raw every Monday night. I like literally
Royal Rumble,
right?
WrestleMania,
every pay-per-view. Literally, it was years of not missing a storyline. So then, when it came time to write the books, it was, I won't say pretty easy, but it was pretty easy. So.
I see that you worked on some Star Wars books, the Clone War books. I know I keep going back to this show Bible question, but for that, I have to assume you were given many more parameters. I feel like the Star Wars universe has such strict laws about what's canon and what's not. Was that a different kind of experience?
That was honestly not as controlled an experience as you might think it would be. And I think the reason is because those Clone Wars books are Pick Your Path books, which were modeled after the trademarked Choose Your Own Adventure style books. Mm-hmm. I had done a bunch of those for Club Penguin, and I sort of had to figure out how to do that on my own. And I know a lot of people use like a program now to write those Choose Your Path type books, but I was using a system I came up with poster board and Post-its in all different colors, and and I would paginate and it was wild. So my theory is these are so challenging to write and even more challenging to edit that whoever got it on the licensing end might have just been like, this is great, you know. So they had a lot of they had a lot to say about, you begin by submitting the story idea and submitting in a choose your path, like here are the 3 or 4 ways the story's going to go. And so they had feedback on that, but not a super amount of feedback on the final manuscript. And I think, the more you do anything, the better you get at it. And so I think I became pretty good at understanding how to keep the heart of a property, how to stick to the important details of any property. And usually when you can do that, you make a licensor pretty happy.
2 other types of books I want to talk about. You did trivia books for Pokemon. Was that all you, or did they give you like ideas of like mostly questions about the color of like keep it easy, like what color is this Pokemon, or did you have free reign to kind of go crazy with trivia
That
questions?
was pretty much free reign. I mean, the one thing, with any of the Pokemon books and even the Yu-Gi-Oh, we always had to be careful. It all had to be about the animation, and you couldn't bring in anything from the game.
Oh,
So
okay.
the game world and the animation
or the
world,
cards,
or the card
yeah,
game, right?
Yeah.
So that was a little tricky at first with some of like the guidebooks and the trivia books, but no, basically with trivia, it's like it was left up to.
Okay, then I have to ask about this book. I'm holding up a how to draw Pokemon book. I thought I got this book and I was like, I'm going to try to draw. There's no way. I'm terrible. Could you draw these Pokemon, Tracey?
Oh,
and how does this process work? Like, do they assign an artist to you? Like, what happens when you have a book like this?
So with a book like this, they start with the artist and they get an artist to, in what is it, 4 steps or 6 steps for each Pokemon.
Let's see.
They get an artist to do the
4.
sketches, and this was probably somebody who worked for Pokemon or was a Pokemon approved illustrator. And then
these are not easy.
No. So then
Steve's a professional artist. You guys can't see what I'm looking at,
yeah.
But like they're like, step 1, yeah, just draw the outline of Totodile.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
I know. All right, so I had nothing to do with that. So basically, I would just get here's what the artist did. Now we need you to write some flavor copy and then explain each step.
Like it's like a recipe book. Like you're writing here's the recipe, Tracey. You're not allowed to input any. You're throw in extra chocolate here. You just write the stuff that describes it.
And I probably had like 2 weeks to write that as well. But that for the longest time was my number one best-selling. My number one, not really mine, but like it would come up as my author name as my top book. And I think only in recent years I have an original series out for Scholastic called Dragon Masters, and I think I have finally surpassed how to draw Pokemon. Well,
speaking of your original works, which I definitely want to get into, sometimes it's very comparable to us dubbing a show as opposed to, like, for a voice actor, dubbing a show that's already with parameters in place as opposed to creating a whole new character. And sometimes I think we find creativity within those parameters, and when we're left to our own devices, like anything goes, it gets a little overwhelming. So, like, can you talk about the difference writing for each and what's more fun for you?
Let's see. I think it's definitely more fun to write without the parameters. I will say that, just based on having done a lot of both. When I started writing Dragon Masters 10 years ago, with the kind of writing I do, there's usually some parameters, and that's helpful. So Scholastic was looking for, they didn't give me an idea, but they were looking for a serious fantasy series with dragons for young kids, for like 6 to 8 years old, but they wanted like danger and adventure. And so those were helpful parameters, right? And so just starting with that, I was able to come up with an idea for the series that they liked. And now I think I definitely do enjoy, having the freedom to come up with whatever story I want, and have my characters say and do whatever they want. Because, I will say, when sometimes you're writing for a licensed property, it's, characters might say and do things that, you wish they wouldn't, but
right. Yeah. You can't change it.
Right.
There's no freedom. So the Dragon Master books are your current series. Is there anything else we should definitely check out that you're super proud of? Brag a little bit. Tell us where to find you and follow you.
So I really am very proud of Dragon Masters. It's been translated into something like 14 different languages around the world, including like Icelandic and Mongolian, and
oh my god,
and I have like amazing fans all over the world. So you can learn more about Dragon Masters at my website, www.traceywest.com, and that's Tracey with an E. And I'm on socials, usually at Tracey West Books, or on Facebook, it's author Tracey West. In recent years, I got to write a really fun series for Lego called the Spinjitzu Brothers, and that series book series unfortunately got cut short, but it's a tale of Wu and Garmadon when they're younger, going on a journey that their father sends them on. And actually, there was a tiny line in the series recently from one of the books, so I guess it's like canon, sort of.
That's cool.
Which is
I was
cool.
That's a very cool.
Yeah,
because you feel like then you contribute. It's like backwards.
Yes,
which is awesome.
Yes, so they are acknowledging.
So cool.
They acknowledge this storyline in the cartoon. So that was a lot of fun. But those are really fun books if you like Lego. You can still get them and check those out.
Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes to all of these places Tracey mentioned. And thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. This has been so fascinating. This is just a whole other side of this industry that we don't really get to hear about. So thank you.
So cool. I absolutely love your podcast. 4Kids was such a big part of my career, and I had no idea what was going on your side of things. And so listening to the podcast and finding out has been a lot of fun. And I really appreciate you asking me to come on, because people usually don't want writers to talk very much.
Oh my gosh. No, are you kidding? No, well, I keep saying it's like, because the actors get to go to these conventions and do this stuff. And when I said and we know the least usually about these properties. And when I said we were going to have you, one of the listeners actually requested you. And I started looking up and I was like, holy moly, of course. And people were so excited because it's the behind the scenes people that can answer those questions and did most of the work and should be getting more attention. So I'm so glad to have the opportunity to talk to you and shine a light on the people who don't always get to, be front and center.
Well, thank you so much.
McDonald's meets the Minecraft universe with one of 6 collectibles and your choice of a Big Mac or 10-piece McNuggets with spicy Nether Flame sauce. Now available with a Minecraft movie meal.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time, a Minecraft movie only in theaters.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
That was so interesting. Had you read any of those books growing up, or was that not your thing?
The Pokemon one, I like the Pokemon I Choose You, the book that I have my hands right now. Not mine. It looks very familiar. Okay. I might have had that one because I was about I was hitting 10 when Pokemon was like blowing up. So I think I was a little too old for those books. Those are very
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Because I was like
advanced.
More like when Viz was putting out that manga, that Pokemon manga. That's like that was more I was in that target demo there.
Okay. Yeah, something I just realized we didn't get into, which I would have loved to talk about, is how cool it is that these exist to get kids into reading, and like the whole debate of like, is reading a graphic novel really reading? And of course it is. And if it gets a kid wanting to read, then who cares? You know, like it's still age appropriate and wonderful. So
as a terrible reader, I'll back you up on that.
Were you a bad, like, when you say terrible, you mean you just don't read a lot?
I don't read a lot, and I think even during school it was like it took a lot for me to get through a book. I think there was so many times, you know, like you got to read a couple chapters and then you take the quiz next week. Ooh, there was sometimes I'd just be skimming through it trying to get the gist of it. I like reading comics too. I don't know.
But I guess if that had been presented to you as a way to learn to read, you might have liked it more.
I remember there was like something in elementary school, or I think it was like done on a Friday evening, where it's like, hey, it's encouraging to read. Like kids just hang out in the gym and everyone just reads quietly for like an hour or something. And I was I'm like, do comics count? And I think a teacher was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I brought like some comics.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So to me, I was like, cool. This is what I like to read, and that said so much about.
That's weird. Okay, so something cool that I should have asked about that's on her website, but I want to tell you guys about, and I will put a link to it in her biography section on her website. It says that her and her husband have something called the Dragon Wagon. It's a mobile children's bookstore serving their community. They take it to like libraries and festivals, and every kid who visits gets a free book. And it probably is very cool looking, Dragon Wagon. So definitely check that out. I don't know that there's like special effects, Steve. Let's not build it up.
I mean, that would catch my attention. I'd be like, hell yeah, reading is awesome.
Well, okay, there's no promises about. But I used to love the was it the bookmobile? What was the thing that would go to the schools where we would like get to pick out books?
That might have been like your gen. Like we had the book fair. I remember the Scholastic Book Fair was.
Yeah, that's what it was. And I loved that. It was so empowering to because it was different than the library for some reason. Like the library, because the library is just like an everyday thing. But this was like.
You could own these.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I bought a ton of stuff at the book fair that I never wound up reading. I think I'm like that to this day. I'll like pick something up. I'm like, yeah, I'll get this because I'll do it eventually, and then you never do it.
Well, like your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Like I have so many. I have a stack of books, and certain books that I want to own like a hard copy of, like that I don't just want to eat. Like I bought the Bruce Springsteen biography, and I do want to read it. I just it's never gonna happen.
This year is gonna be a year of decluttering. I hope for me.
But books I like to look at. I like to look at my books even if I haven't.
My problem was I was a terrible reader, but I would I would buy books, like big like guides or other stuff. And I think like a book I have here is like the autobiography of Bill Pete. I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Pete.
No.
Another like he was a children's book illustrator, but he used to work at Disney. He was like a story. He was a board artist. Maybe I think he was an animator too. But like, it's an amazing book. I don't think I've ever read it. I just like look at
but that's fine. I don't think that there's nothing wrong with that.
And then it just goes, that's the kind of brain that's in my head. But
and if it's inspiring to you, then who cares? You're getting use out of it.
But that's decluttering. I hate to get real for a moment here, but with like the fires going on in LA and just potential, like the thought of evacuating, you do the thing
stuff.
You do. It's like
when you think about stuff and you need stuff. Yeah.
And like, well, it's like, it's like, what do I say? What comes with me? Like, what do I save? The typical icebreaker question, like what do you save in a fire besides the important stuff? And I was starting to take a real hard look at the things I owned. I'm like, maybe I got a little carried away. Sorry, not to get too real.
Well, But they make you happy. I remember a guy, I was in my 20s, like a guy broke up with me and he goes, but you have really cool stuff. You'll be fine. And I was like, what?
Dude, that's how I got through my 20s.
I think that like in your 20s, it's sort of like maybe a thing that you're like, I think I had a Pez collection and like, I think he thought that, but still I was like, that doesn't make up for the heartbreak. It's just a very weird thing to say.
Yeah.
You have cool stuff. But again, and I remember thinking like, that's really not what's important to me.
It's like you got a hobby.
Like, yes, I like my stuff, but
mm-hmm.
Very weird. That's a weird tangent, but I'm so glad that we talked to an author during this because, and I love that in later years, some of the stuff she wrote got put into a show because the way she was working on Pokemon and had to get ahead of those episodes kind of stifles creativity. You know,
mm-hmm.
there's major parameters she was writing within.
Absolutely. Yeah. But she still enjoyed it, which is good. You know, it could get negative very fast, but you know, got a lot of work on it.
Cartoons.
Like, yeah. And like, it wasn't just like a handful of books. She wrote a ton of stuff. You know, you should like look her up. Like it's amazing. Yeah. And so many different like properties and series. You know,
yeah, you guys, I'm going to put a link that it's going to go to the Goodreads page, which was really comprehensive, but then I'll put some specific links to some of the books we talked about, like on Amazon where you can actually get them.
Yeah.
This is going to be a very link-heavy, show-note-y episode because they're really kind of the I don't know the word I'm looking for. The real interview is like reading her stuff. Like, this is really interesting, but then go read her stuff because even if it's below your grade level, just read it. It's fun.
You know, if you have kids, you know, check out her original stuff. You know?
Yeah, I was gonna send these to my cousin's kids to read, but I think I'll keep the How to Draw Pokemon one in case I
you gotta practice.
Ever want to just try. And also, they're only 4. Like, they'll just get frustrated because it really was much harder than I anticipated.
Yeah,
I
remember trying to like teach other kids how to draw, and like it clicks with some people and it doesn't with others. But that's, you know, the same thing with me and other stuff. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't immediately, like, I can't do immediately, and I get frustrated and I go cry about it.
Well, the Totodile was specifically hard because the step 1 was really to draw the whole shape of it. Like, I like when it's a very rudimentary, when it's like circle, square, and look, magically you have this thing.
Totodile's a tough one to draw. Yeah,
I'm surprised Totodile made it into the book.
Yeah, not like the snout, or I could say of whatever, of like a crocodile, an alligator. Like it's like a duck bill. You ever try drawing like Donald Duck or Daffy Duck? It's fucking hard.
No, I wouldn't even try because I'm terrible at it.
Those duck bills are Jesus. Those are tough. I
drew a little boy the other day because I was with my friend and her daughter and her dad, and I was with my friend and her husband and their daughter. And her daughters wanted to play preschool, so we all had to be the preschool students, and she was the teacher of us, and we all had to pretend play this game with her. But she named one of us. She named her dad Mike Jepsy. Like, she just made up funny names for us, but she kept saying Mike Jepsy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I went home and I'm like, I have to draw Mike Jepsy. Because it was the funniest name. I was like, where did you come up with that? But I drew this like kid with like scraggly hair. Like, I sent it to my friend. I'm like, this is Mike Jepsy. Like, he needs his own show because it's such a weird name. And I'm like, is that his last name? She's like, no.
Wait, what?
That wasn't his last name. That was his name, Mike Jepsy. I don't know. It was so cute.
All one
but
word.
It also, all one word. I don't know. That really was amazing. I probably should.
Sounds like a little stinker.
No
this Mike Jepsy.
Well, that's what I thought. I was like, Mike Jepsy's is like a character.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'll cut this.
Hope Scholastic is listening.
No, but it's funny because I've gotten to work on the other side of these adaptations. Like, I got to do, I did the DC Girls books, like the adaptations of those. And it's kind of weird because I'm imitating the voices of friends of mine, but it's not the show, so I don't have to match it perfectly, and they don't expect an audiobook to be a perfect impression of these characters. But because of what I do and because I know them, I felt so much more pressure. So like I don't think those Pokemon books ever got made into audio, but it would be kind of fun to hear them do their versions of the actors.
Especially the Pokemon voices themselves.
Yes, like the Pika. Pika all over that. Well, we've done it again, Steve. Another episode in the books.
Another podcast. Who would have thunk?
Like everyone else in Los Angeles right now, we are recording our podcast. Well, thank you guys for listening. Again, check the show notes. 4Kids Flashback with the number 4 has all the stuff. Please think about supporting us if you like the show. For $5 a month, you can get the episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/4kidsflashback. And on that note, we will
catch you next time.
Sorry, I'm so giggly. Catch you next time. 4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to Maji, MAJI.media. Thanks for listening.